Berkshire is known for royal history and quiet countryside, but beneath its castles, inns and old houses lie places marked by betrayal, tragedy and restless spirits where the past never truly lets go. Windsor Castle, rising above the town of Windsor Castle, is the oldest and largest inhabited castle in the world. For centuries, it has been a symbol of royal power, ceremony and continuity. Yet behind its grand stone walls and guarded gates lies a reputation shaped by an extraordinary number of ghostly encounters. Windsor Castle has been home to British monarchs for nearly 1,000 years. Kings and queens have lived, ruled, suffered, and died within its walls. With such a concentration of history, it is perhaps unsurprising that the castle is widely regarded as one of the most haunted locations in Britain. One of the most frequently reported apparitions is Queen Elizabeth III. She has been seen walking through the castle corridors, her presence often announced by the distinctive sound of high-heeled shoes tapping on stone floors. Witnesses describe her figure as regal and unmistakable, appearing briefly before vanishing without a trace. King George III is another well-known spectral resident. He is said to appear in the library, sometimes staring out of the windows, sometimes muttering the words, what a haunting echo of the mental illness that marked his later life. Perhaps the most dramatic sightings involve Henry VIII. He has been reported walking along the battlements before disappearing through a wall where a doorway once stood. In the cloisters, he is said to be heard groaning heavily, dragging one foot as he moves, a grim reminder of his declining health. His second wife, Anne Boleyn, is also said to appear at a window, silently weeping. Other royal spirits have been reported throughout the castle. Charles III has been seen stroking his beard in the library, while George Villiers, the first Duke of Buckingham, has also been encountered. William Wykeham is said to appear in the Round Tower, radiating a calm and peaceful presence. The Curfew Tower, where prisoners were once executed, is associated with slow, deliberate footsteps heard on empty stairs. Elsewhere, a man has been seen leading a horse straight through a wall in the kitchen area. In the deanery, a young boy has been heard screaming, "I don't want to go riding today," accompanied by the sound of running footsteps. Paranormal investigators believe Windsor Castle hosts both residual and intelligent hauntings, echoes of routine mixed with spirits aware of their surroundings. Skeptics argue that such stories are shaped by expectation and legend. Yet few places in Britain can match Windsor Castle for the sheer number and consistency of its ghostly reports. In a building that has never truly slept, some believe the dead still walk beside the living quietly, reminding visitors that history here is never just history. The Royal Stag, standing on the village green in Datchet, just a short distance from Windsor Castle. The Royal Stag is a traditional English pub with a deeply unsettling reputation. From the outside, it appears warm and welcoming. Inside, however, many believe it is watched over by spirits that never found peace. The building dates back several centuries and has served locals, travelers and soldiers passing through the area. Over time, numerous strange occurrences have been reported, particularly in the cellar and upstairs bedrooms. One of the most frequently seen apparitions is a tall man with a large hooked nose and grey hair observed standing silently in one of the bedrooms. Witnesses often mistake him for another guest before realizing he vanishes without a sound. His presence is usually accompanied by a sudden drop in temperature. Poltergeist-like activity has also been reported. Bottles have been found smashed without explanation, and a toilet has been known to flush by itself. In the cellar, staff have heard mumbling voices and slow footsteps moving around in the darkness. The cellar also contains the tombstone of William Herbert, which is said to mysteriously return to its original position whenever it is moved. Perhaps the most tragic story associated with the royal stag concerns a young boy. According to legend, the child was left outside to play in the snow while his father drank inside the pub. As the evening passed, the boy grew colder and repeatedly tapped on the window, trying to get his father's attention. He was never noticed. By the time the door was opened, the child had frozen to death. It is said that the boy's handprint remains on the glass to this day, despite repeated attempts to explain or remove it. Some visitors claim the print appears darker during cold weather. Others report feeling sudden sadness or guilt when standing near the window. Paranormal investigators believe the hauntings at the Royal Stag may represent both residual trauma and intelligent activity. Skeptics suggest coincidence and suggestion play a role. Yet many staff members insist the atmosphere changes after dark. In a place built for warmth and companionship, something still waits outside, tapping softly, hoping to be let in. The Ostrich Inn. On the high street of Colnbrook stands the Ostrich Inn, a coaching inn whose charming exterior hides one of the darkest legends in English innkeeping history. Long before modern roads and travellers, this was a place where the wealthy stopped to rest and where some never left alive. The Ostrich Inn dates back to at least the 12th century. In the 14th century, it was allegedly run by a landlord named Jarman, whose hospitality concealed a murderous secret. According to legend, Jarman targeted rich guests traveling alone. He encouraged them to drink heavily, ensuring they were completely intoxicated before retiring for the night. Once his victims were unconscious, Jarman is said to have lowered them through a trapdoor into a vat of boiling fat in the kitchen below. Their deaths were silent, efficient, and left little evidence. Jarman then stole their money and belongings, disposing of their bodies without suspicion. The scheme worked for years until one victim failed to lose consciousness completely. The man fought back, raising the alarm. Jarman and his wife were arrested, tried, and executed, bringing an end to one of the most brutal killing sprees associated with an English inn. Since then, the Ostrich Inn has developed a reputation for strange and disturbing activity. Guests and staff have reported hearing unexplained bumps, heavy sighs, and dragging sounds, particularly near the kitchen and upper floors. Some describe the noises as rhythmic, as though something is being moved repeatedly. A female apparition has also been reported in the upstairs corridor. She is often described as wearing Victorian-era clothing and carrying herself with quiet sadness. Many believe this figure could be Mrs. Jarman, condemned to wander the building where so many died. Other unexplained events include candles in the function room, reigniting after being extinguished, and taps in the upstairs ladies' toilets turning on and off by themselves. Cold spots are frequently reported, along with an oppressive atmosphere that many guests find difficult to ignore. Paranormal investigators suggest the Ostrich Inn may host both residual hauntings, echoes of repeated violence, and intelligent presences aware of the living. Skeptics argue that age suggestion and folklore exaggerate the truth, yet few who spend the night here describe it as restful. In a place once built to shelter travelers, something still waits in the dark, remembering every guest who never made it upstairs again. The Oakley Court Hotel, set beside the River Thames near Windsor. The Oakley Court Hotel is an imposing Victorian mansion, surrounded by gardens and quiet water. Today, it is known for luxury weddings and film productions. Yet long before it became a hotel, Oakley Court was already gaining a reputation for strange and unexplained activity. The building dates back to the mid-19th century and was once a private residence. Like many grand houses of the period, It relied heavily on servants, whose lives were often lived in silence and strict routine. Death, illness, and hardship were common behind the scenes, rarely recorded, but deeply felt. Over the years, guests and staff have reported a wide range of paranormal experiences. Unlike locations tied to a single tragic story, Oakley Court is known for its numerous and varied hauntings, making it particularly difficult to dismiss as coincidence. One of the most frequently reported phenomena is the sound of footsteps echoing through empty corridors, especially late at night. Guests have also described doors opening and closing on their own lights, flickering without cause, and the feeling of being watched while alone in their rooms. Several visitors have reported seeing shadowy figures moving silently through the building, often near staircases and upper floors. These apparitions are usually glimpsed, only briefly vanishing when directly observed. Cold spots appear suddenly in specific rooms, sometimes accompanied by an oppressive heaviness in the air. Staff members working overnight shifts have described hearing voices murmuring behind closed doors, though no clear words can be understood. Others report the sensation of someone standing close beside them, even when the room is empty. Paranormal investigators suggest Oakley Court may host residual hauntings, energy replaying moments of routine from the past, rather than a single, identifiable spirit. This could explain why activity is widespread rather than concentrated in one area. Skeptics argue that old buildings naturally produce unexplained sounds, especially near rivers where temperature and humidity fluctuate. Yet many guests experience phenomena without prior knowledge of the hotel's reputation. Oakley Court remains a popular destination, its elegance unchanged. But once the corridors fall quiet and the river outside grows still, some believe the house remembers those who lived and worked there long ago. And in a place built to impress, not everyone who checks in ever truly leaves. East Hamstead Park. Set within landscaped grounds on the outskirts of Bracknell, East Hamstead Park is a grand Victorian mansion that has served many roles over the centuries. Once a private residence, it later became an institutional building and now operates as a hotel and events venue. Despite its modern use, many believe the house still carries the presence of someone from its past. East Hamstead Park was constructed in the 19th century, and like many large estates, relied heavily on domestic staff. Lives were lived quietly behind the scenes, marked by long hours, strict discipline, and little recognition. It is from this unseen world that the house's most persistent ghost story is believed to originate. Visitors and staff have reported sightings of a female apparition near the ornate central staircase. She is often described as an elderly woman, dressed plainly resembling a cleaning lady or housekeeper from an earlier era. Her appearance is brief, but distinct. She is usually seen standing on the stairs, head slightly bowed, as if concentrating on her work. Witnesses frequently assume she is a member of staff, only to realize moments later that no one else is present. When approached, the figure vanishes silently, leaving behind a sudden chill and an unsettling stillness. Other unexplained events have been reported throughout the building. Footsteps echo along corridors when the house is empty. Doors are sometimes found open after being securely closed. Some guests describe the sensation of being watched while passing through quieter areas of the house, particularly during the evening. Unlike more aggressive hauntings, the atmosphere at East Hamstead Park is described as calm but heavy. There are no loud disturbances or violent encounters. Instead, the presence feels routine, as though someone continues to perform their duties long after death. Paranormal researchers often classify such cases as residual hauntings, where emotional energy from repetitive actions becomes imprinted on a location. The cleaning lady's repeated appearance on the staircase supports this theory. Skeptics argue that lighting expectation and the building's age play a role in such sightings. Yet many witnesses report their experiences before hearing any ghost stories associated with the house. East Hamstead Park remains elegant and welcoming. But when the lights dim and the halls grow quiet, some believe the housekeeper still checks the stairs, ensuring everything is in order, just as she always did. Because some homes never forget those who cared for them most. Redham House, Bearwood House. Hidden behind trees and long driveways near Sindlesham stands Redham House, formerly known as Bearwood House, and later Bearwood College. The building's grand architecture and landscaped grounds suggest prestige and order. Yet one of its most persistent ghost stories involves a figure that feels disturbingly out of place. Bearwood House was built in the 19th century and has served as a private mansion, an educational institution, and later a school. Over time, countless students, staff, and visitors pass through its halls. While many historic buildings are associated with human spirits, Redham House is linked to something far more unusual. Witnesses have reported sightings of a phantom red dwarf within the grounds and interior corridors. Descriptions are remarkably consistent: a short, human-like figure, often dressed in red or appearing reddish in color, glimpsed suddenly before disappearing without sound. The figure is usually seen briefly, often at the edge of vision, and never approaches directly. Those who have encountered the apparition describe a sharp sense of unease rather than fear. Some report feeling disoriented moments before the sighting, while others describe a sudden drop in temperature or a heavy pressure in the air. In several cases, the figure vanished when witnesses tried to follow or focus on it. Unlike many hauntings, there is no clear historical figure linked to the apparition. No records suggest a person matching the description lived or died at Bearwood House. This absence of explanation has led to speculation that the figure may be folkloric rather than human. In British folklore, dwarf-like entities are often associated with trickster spirits or guardians of land. Some researchers suggest the apparition may be tied to the site itself, rather than the building, a presence disturbed by later construction and occupation. Skeptics argue that lighting conditions, imagination, and stress play a role, particularly in large institutions where people are often tired or distracted. Yet the consistency of reports across decades and different uses of the site raises questions. Paranormal investigators remain divided on how to classify the phenomenon. Some label it a non-human entity, others a psychological projection shaped by expectation. Whatever its nature, Redham House stands apart from other haunted locations in Berkshire, because not all hauntings involve the dead. Some involve things that were never human to begin with, and may have been watching long before the house was ever built. The old church. Near the site where Arborfield Hall once stood, lie the quiet remains of an old church, partially reclaimed by nature and time. Little remains of the grand house nearby, but the churchyard endures, and with it, one of Berkshire's most tragic ghost stories. The legend centers on a young woman said to have lived at Arborfield Hall. On New Year's Eve, she was meant to meet her lover beneath a yew tree near the church, a place chosen for secrecy and hope. She dressed in a long white gown, believing she was about to begin a new life. Instead, she never returned. According to local folklore, the woman was murdered by the hall's butler, though the motive remains unclear. Some say jealousy, others fear she knew something she should not. Her body was discovered too late, and justice, if it came at all, offered little comfort. From that night onward, the churchyard was said to feel changed. Witnesses over the years have reported seeing a spectral bride beneath the yew tree, particularly on New Year's Eve. She is described as wearing a flowing white dress, standing silently as though waiting for someone who will never arrive. Her figure is often semi-transparent, illuminated faintly, even in low light. Those who have encountered her describe a profound sense of sadness, rather than fear. The air reportedly grows colder, and sounds from the surrounding countryside seem to fade away. Some witnesses claim she turns slowly to face them, before vanishing, leaving the churchyard unnaturally quiet. Others report hearing faint footsteps near the church ruins when no one is present, or the soft rustle of fabric moving through the grass. No voices are heard, only the impression of expectation suspended in time. Paranormal researchers suggest this may be a classic residual haunting, a moment of intense emotional trauma replaying itself under specific conditions. The timing, New Year's Eve, supports the idea of a fixed imprint rather than an intelligent spirit. Skeptics argue that folklore and atmosphere influence perception, especially in isolated rural settings. Yet even those unfamiliar with the legend describe an overwhelming heaviness near the yew tree. The old church at Arborfield is no longer a place of regular worship, but each year, as one year ends and another begins, some believe a bride still waits there, dressed for a future that never came, because some promises are broken so violently that time itself refuses to move on. The Grotto, tucked away along Reading Road in Lower Basildon, stands a property known simply as the Grotto. Surrounded by gardens, woodland, and quiet countryside, the house appears peaceful and secluded. Yet beneath its calm exterior lies a concentration of paranormal reports that have troubled visitors for generations. The Grotto was once home to Lady Fain, a member of the aristocracy who lived there until her death in 1792. Since then, her presence has become central to the site's ghostly reputation. Witnesses have reported seeing a white, transparent female figure moving silently along the staircase. The apparition is often described as fragile and faint, appearing briefly before fading into the walls. Another figure has been seen near the location of an old tennis court. This presence is described as flimsy and indistinct, slowly making its way toward the River Thames. Many believe this figure is also connected to Lady Fain, repeating a familiar route from her life. The haunting does not end with apparitions. In a nearby gardener's cottage, a door handle was once seen, turning on its own, despite no one being present on the other side. In another incident, a clock suddenly fell from the wall, narrowly missing a witness standing beneath it. Inside the main house, reports become even stranger. A so-called close abode within the building is associated with persistent disturbances. A bell that has long been disconnected has been heard ringing without explanation. Bedroom doors open slowly by themselves, and footsteps have been heard pacing the corridors late at night. Visitors frequently report sudden cold spots and an oppressive stillness, as though the house is holding its breath. Some describe the feeling of being watched, particularly on staircases and in narrow passageways. Paranormal researchers suggest the Grotto may host multiple residual hauntings linked to repeated routines and emotional attachment rather than conscious interaction. The repetition of movement along stairs paths and corridors supports this theory. Skeptics argue that old buildings shift and settle, and that expectation plays a role. Yet many experiences were reported before visitors learned of the house's reputation. The Grotto remains a private and quiet place, but those who have felt its presence insist the house is never truly empty. Here the past does not intrude loudly. It moves softly, transparently, and always just out of reach. Englefield House, set within rolling parkland near the village of Englefield. Englefield House is an imposing Elizabethan mansion surrounded by quiet fields and ancient trees. From a distance, it appears stately and serene. Yet for centuries, it has been associated with a ghostly presence rooted in betrayal, absence, and a life erased too easily. Englefield House has been home to generations of powerful families. One of its most enduring legends centers on a former owner known as Powlett Wright. According to local tradition, he was a sailor by trade, often away at sea for long periods. On one such voyage, he left the house in the care of his brother, a decision that would ultimately seal his fate. While Powlett Wright was still alive, his brother reportedly told others that he had died during his travels. With this false claim, he assumed control of the estate, effectively erasing Powlett Wright from public memory. When the sailor eventually returned, it was too late. His place in the world had already been taken from him. Soon after, sightings began to occur. A figure dressed in a sailor's coat has been reported peering through the windows of Englefield House, particularly at night. Witnesses describe the man as pale and watchful, standing silently as though searching for something he has lost. He never enters the house, only observes it from outside before vanishing. In addition to the window sightings, Powlett Wright is said to visit his wife's grave in the nearby churchyard. Visitors have reported seeing a lone figure standing beside the headstone in the early morning or at dusk, disappearing when approached. Other strange occurrences have been reported around the house and grounds. Sudden cold spots, the feeling of being watched, and unexplained sounds have been noted by staff and visitors alike. The atmosphere is often described as heavy and sorrowful rather than threatening. Paranormal investigators suggest this may be an intelligent haunting, a spirit aware of loss and betrayal repeatedly returning to places tied to unfinished business. Skeptics argue that folklore and expectation influence perception, yet the consistency of reports over generations remains difficult to ignore. Englefield House stands as a symbol of continuity and heritage, but outside its windows, some believe a sailor still waits, looking in on a life that was taken from him, searching for a home that no longer recognized his return. Englefield House, set within rolling parkland near the village of Englefield. Englefield House is an imposing Elizabethan mansion surrounded by quiet fields and ancient trees. From a distance, it appears stately and serene. Yet for centuries, it has been associated with a ghostly presence rooted in betrayal, absence, and a life erased too easily. Englefield House has been home to generations of powerful families. One of its most enduring legends centers on a former owner known as Powlett Wright. According to local tradition, he was a sailor by trade, often away at sea for long periods. On one such voyage, he left the house in the care of his brother, a decision that would ultimately seal his fate. While Powlett Wright was still alive, his brother reportedly told others that he had died during his travels. With this false claim, he assumed control of the estate, effectively erasing Powlett Wright from public memory. When the sailor eventually returned, it was too late. His place in the world had already been taken from him. Soon after, sightings began to occur. A figure dressed in a sailor's coat has been reported peering through the windows of Englefield House, particularly at night. Witnesses describe the man as pale and watchful, standing silently as though searching for something he has lost. He never enters the house, only observes it from outside before vanishing. In addition to the window sightings, Powlett Wright is said to visit his wife's grave in the nearby churchyard. Visitors have reported seeing a lone figure standing beside the headstone in the early morning or at dusk, disappearing when approached. Other strange occurrences have been reported around the house and grounds. Sudden cold spots, the feeling of being watched, and unexplained sounds have been noted by staff and visitors alike. The atmosphere is often described as heavy and sorrowful rather than threatening. Paranormal investigators suggest this may be an intelligent haunting, a spirit aware of loss and betrayal, repeatedly returning to places tied to unfinished business. Skeptics argue that folklore and expectation influence perception. Yet the consistency of reports over generations remains difficult to ignore. Englefield House stands as a symbol of continuity and heritage. But outside its windows, some believe a sailor still waits looking in on a life that was taken from him, searching for a home that no longer recognized his return.